This is On Wisconsin Workforce with the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development. I'm Caleb Frostman, Secretary of DWD, here to talk about workforce development and economic development in this great state we call Wisconsin. Today on Wisconsin Workforce, I'll be discussing the state of the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development with the leadership team. I'll talk workforce and economic development with Green Bay Packers President and CEO Mark Murphy, and I'll meet with DWD Chief Wisconomist Dennis Winters and discuss job numbers. And today I'm here with Joanna Richard, who's DWD's Deputy Secretary, and Danielle Williams, our Assistant Deputy Secretary. Good morning.
Good morning.
Actually, it's afternoon, but I'll say good morning. That works. Well, we've been with DWD for the last 5.5 months. I said 6 today, but I was corrected. It's been 5.5 since Governor Evers took office on January 7th. And I'd love to give the listeners a little bit of a flavor of who we are and kind of what we've been up to here at DWD. So let's start with Joanna. Why don't you give us a little background of who you are, what you're all about, how you got here, and just off the cuff, biography, Sagittarius, I don't know.
I am a Sagittarius, so that must mean something. Happy to be here with you, Secretary. So I grew up in a small city, Two Rivers, Wisconsin, located on Lake Michigan. Grew up in a very manufacturing community. We had Hamilton's was the largest employer in town. We had Paragon Electric, Miro, who made pots and pans. In fact, my grandfather and father worked at Miro at one point in their careers. So we were, it was a hard-working, blue-collar community, and both my parents were union presidents representing their various workforce, and so this working for the Department of Workforce Development is part of my DNA. I love the work that goes on here, helping people find their careers, helping people that have been on hard times find their way back into the workforce, and so it's a great opportunity to be here. I was the first in my family to graduate from college, graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh, and since then I've worked in Madison, in and around the Capitol, in the Assembly, the Senate, Department of Justice, Department of Health Services, and here. So this has been my favorite job. Thank you.
And how about you, Danielle?
Hey, thanks. Like Joanna, I think my childhood and my parents had the greatest influence on my worldview and are really why I ended up here at DWD. My parents were divorced, so I grew up in neighboring cities of Milton and Janesville, Wisconsin, which are in the southern part of the state. My dad worked and has worked in the same warehouse pretty much since high school, but under different corporations. He had about 15, 20 years in when the company he worked for went bankrupt, and he lost his pension, all of his retirement, seniority, all of that was gone. So he had went back to school to start a whole new career path, but ended up returning back when the warehouse opened back up under a new organization. So even though he's been there all this time, there continues to be a lot of uncertainty about his employment over the years. And it's like whenever the global markets change, the large international corporation that he works for considers outsourcing his job and, sending all of the jobs down to cheaper labor markets. So, and given that he lost his retirement, he'll need to work a lot longer than most to be able to afford retirement. So it's always scary to think about what will happen if they close. But, my dad's my dad, and he just keeps his head down and goes to work every day, does the best job he can. And sometimes that means working some extra jobs to pull through. Beyond my dad, my mom also has had a huge influence on me. When I was young, she too would have to juggle a few jobs to provide for me, but then she ended up working at a credit union where she got involved with her union and ended up earning a wage and living that helped me afford to go to college and has really set me up since. And eventually she ended up getting recruited to work for the union as an organizer. She would travel the Midwest helping workers who wanted to get a union because they were facing some really troubling working conditions, which she would then come home to tell me about. And this was the late 90s, early 2000s, and I couldn't believe that some of these stories were true and things like this were happening. And so I think when you hear those stories as a teenager and just thinking about that and then how fair it is that my dad's job security is not always in his control, it just made me always think that we should have a fair playbook, a system with rules that helped protect people. And that's why I ended up majoring in political science in undergrad. I eventually got my master's in public policy and focused on labor and employment law in law school. So I always wanted to be a part of helping government work better for working people. So I've been really fortunate to spend the past 13 years working in state and county government to pursue these goals. And now at DWD, I get to focus on these issues all day, every day. And I couldn't be happier.
All right, and so I grew up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. I was born in Stevens Point, moved to Green Bay when I was 4, and went to Madison for college in the business school, got a degree in real estate, and what was hiring at the time were banks, and so I got hired by M&I Bank out of college to work in their real estate banking group in the Twin Cities, and so I spent my first 4 years there and then transitioned to U.S. Bank, about 2 buildings down the street, for the next 5.5 years. I really appreciated that experience, really taught me financial analysis, also how to think critically, write technically, and use facts persuasively. And so I really look back on that 9 years as really formative, but I also found it didn't feed my soul. And I had really meaningful experiences as a volunteer, doing fundraising, doing work in my community. And so I thought if I could maybe parlay that fulfillment into a full-time job that paid the bills, I should do that. And at the same time, I was feeling a very strong pull back to Wisconsin. All my nuclear family was either in Stevens Point or Green Bay. So I started looking for work in a more rural setting. I loved being in the Twin Cities, but I'm a huge hunter and fisherman, so if I could find a way to be closer to my deer stand or duck blind or my beehives, I wanted to do that. And so I found an awesome job in a really cool industry, economic development, which was new to me, but it was a really good marriage of kind of where I had been in finance and real estate and where I wanted to go, which was helping my neighbors improve their quality of life. And I loved working in economic development. Did that for about 1.5 years in Door County before entering the state senate, and that was a similar motivation. I loved the work I did in economic development, but I felt like there was so much more that could be done in policy and legislation. So raised my hand and won a special election in June, lost an election that in the same November, and then having worked with the governor in the transition, discussing economic workforce development, I was really grateful and pleased to take the job as secretary here at DWD, and I'm really excited to advocate for folks currently in the workforce and help folks on the sidelines remove barriers to get them into the workforce to find a really high quality of life. And so I'm blessed with a great team, a great boss, and just a really fun work environment, and it's been a fun first 5.5 months. I can't believe it. Some days it seems like it's been 5 years, some days it feels like it's been 5 days, but it's been really, really fun so far. All right, so it has been a fun 5.5 or 6 months. We've done events visiting job centers. We've appreciated employees. We've talked reentry. We've highlighted military spouse events. We've been to correctional facilities. We've kind of done it all. But I'd love to hear from both Joanna and Danielle maybe the most memorable event or the project you've worked on since coming to work in January.
Well, I think, the work we do is so important, and I think with a visionary that we have with Governor Evers, and the work we do is not sexy. We're not going to hand out checks to employers. That's not the style of Governor Evers. He really is asking each of us to pay attention to the infrastructure of our state and how healthy it is. And so today, this morning, I talked to a couple business leaders and government leaders in the Lakeshore area, and that message resonates with them because they are seeing the results of the last 8 years of infrastructure decline, roads crumbling, schools not being fully funded, special education not being fully funded. So I think the governor's direction in making sure our infrastructure is sound so all boats can rise, I think that's really resonating in the community. And when I hear that back from economic developers, that's what they're looking for, I think that makes our job here very, very worthwhile and very important.
I agree. I think it's been just a great experience to get to know all of our employees, see all of the great work that they're doing day to day to really make the lives better for all of the working families in Wisconsin. And now as our new leadership team has come in, really getting to put a focus back on the workers and in every area of the department, whether it's unemployment, how are we making sure that these people can access those benefits that they need in the worst sometimes the worst moments of their lives as they lose their job and the income and all of the fear associated. If someone's injured at work, again, there's that fear of how they're going to take care of their family and get through the next few months or weeks. And just really having a sense of what we're doing every day on the ground. There's a whole new economy that's creating, and how do we get our training dollars out there and in the new industries and the jobs that people are going to have? How do we make sure that those jobs are going to pay a living wage so that the next generation can have the same opportunities we have to go to school, to get the jobs and the careers that engage us and we're passionate about? And it's just been not one event, but just every day seeing all of those little pieces come together. It's been really inspiring.
And I would agree. I think traveling the state back in early May, I did kind of a northern Wisconsin tour, and would really echo Joe's comments that the infrastructure investments, our investments in economic infrastructure, really resonate. Whether that's roads, schools, and it's interesting up in that neck of the woods. A lot of it was the availability and the affordability of childcare. And other parts of the state I visited, and I heard this as an economic developer as well, was the lacking broadband infrastructure. So what that does to level the playing field and make success possible for every entrepreneur, every business owner. People are really excited to hear about those type of priorities. So that was an interesting trip, and not just because it was bookended by the governor's fishing opener, but because of the things we heard from folks throughout the state. But other events, I think we were really blessed to have a really diverse business roundtable last week in Madison with great feedback, with similar feedback. The impediments to growth included, of course, the number of bodies, but also the cost of childcare, transportation options for folks, other issues within Wisconsin. And then I think the one that sticks with me from early on was I think back in February, visited an event. I believe it was called Next Door in Milwaukee, which was a kind of early childhood education center that trained parents as well as young people to become put themselves on a K-12 educator career track, while also providing really high quality early childhood education in inner city Milwaukee. So there have probably been too many events to count, but those are some of the few trips and events we've attended that have really resonated with me. Well, it was great to hear from our Deputy Secretary, Joanna Richard, as well as our Assistant Deputy Secretary, Danielle Williams, and learn more about their perspective of DWD in these past 6 months. But today, I am lucky enough to be in God's country, or the promised land, as so many smart, talented people with good taste call it, Green Bay, Wisconsin. I consider myself very, very fortunate to call Titletown my hometown. It's also the home of Kroll's, Bay Beach, and the Meyer Theater, and of course, Lambeau Field and the Green Bay Packers. In addition to being lucky enough to be in Green Bay today, I am even more fortunate to be joined by Packers President and CEO Mark Murphy. Mark, first off, let me say thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to do today's interview. And I'm excited, and I think our listeners are too, to kind of learn more about the business side of the Packers and how it relates to hiring and retaining and recruiting folks. So I think, for our first question for you is, a lot goes into making the business side successful. You guys employ a bunch of different positions. I would be curious if you could describe the scope of occupations that you guys recruit for and employ off the field.
Sure. It's changed pretty dramatically over the years. I think the two biggest things, going back, the major renovation in 2003. So, that really made Lambeau a facility that's now used year-round. And then more recently, the development of Titletown. That's really, really changed the Packers. We have hundreds of employees, but we have 250 full-time employees. And obviously, there's, just like any corporation, we have a number of different areas. But kind of unique to us, it's community outreach. With the renovation in 2003, we added a Hall of Fame. We now have a very large pro shop, but we have security, finance, facilities, all different kinds of areas. So we're always looking for, and we have a lot of seasonal and a lot of part-time employees. I think we've like most employers, we have faced challenges in terms of being able to find people. I think particularly, like our concessionaire, Delaware North, for our restaurant, we've had some challenges recently with concessions at the stadium. There, we're kind of unique. They're volunteers, but finding with 81,000 people coming to the games. So we've done a number of different things. One of the things we've experimented with and we'll do more of is grab and go concession stands,
nice.
making it a little bit easier. I mean, that's what people are used to now.
Yeah.
You go to airports and kind of self-serve, but that helps us a little bit in terms of lowering the labor demands.
I bet. And as far as recruiting folks, whether it's for concessions or for the back office, do you guys see challenges, being the smallest market, I think in all of pro sports, but definitely in the NFL, are there unique challenges when it comes to recruiting office folks being in a smaller city like that?
Well, knock on wood, we're pretty fortunate. It probably depends on the position, but certainly for our full-time positions, I think, people, want to work in the NFL. They want to be associated with the Packers. And what helps us is particularly, with the more football-related positions, is the quality of life. The cost of living here is very affordable. But we've done, in order to attract, the breadth of employees that we need, we've had to be creative. I think we're using more social media. We're, partnering with some of our local colleges for college job fairs. We just had a job fair for our training camp, and so training camp summer employees, and so it's it's a challenge. But the other thing that's really been very beneficial to us is focusing on recent retirees.
Interesting.
They love work in the pro shop where it's seasonal. The other area where is our tours, Hall of Fame, our tours. And it's interesting. A lot of former coaches, former teachers are really good tour guides.
I bet. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. I think I've heard that term used as gray sourcing, folks getting retirees kind of back in the workforce. And
yeah, and I think they love it. It's they still have the flexibility, and it's just seasonal, and it's particularly if they were involved with the game of football or have a history with the Packers, have a knowledge of the organization. We put them all through kind of a training program, but a lot of people know a lot about the Packers here, so they pick it up pretty quickly.
yeah, it was funny. I saw the portrait from the NFC Championship back in '96, and I remember the score was 30-13 against the Panthers. I was at the game, so a lot of Green Bay natives know a lot about the Packers, and yeah, it was a fun time back in sixth grade. So, so as we talk to employers across the state that are facing some of the same challenges, one of the ways that we found employers to be successful is the ones that build really strong partnerships. So I'd be curious to hear whether it's for workforce reasons or just to be a successful company within Green Bay, what kind of partnerships did the Packers seek out and how have they helped you be successful?
Yeah, no, I think the partnerships are crucial. I mean, for us, we have a great relationship and a partnership with our local chamber. Try to do a lot with them. We do a number of things with the local colleges, particularly NWTC, as well as UWGB and St. Norbert. But I think especially with NWTC, with some of the specific skills that we might need. So we'll have job fairs, and one of the things that we've seen is what we really want, and one of the main purposes of Titletown and some of the development you've seen around the stadium is to do a better job of keeping our college graduates here in the state, in Green Bay, rather than have them go off to, God forbid, Chicago or Minneapolis.
Got to keep them here, keep the talent local.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really good segue, and I guess you kind of covered it a little bit, but I'd be curious to hear, from a business development standpoint and maybe a long-term view, why the Packers got into real estate development. Maybe it is a retention piece, but just this Titletown's been such a excellent thing for Green Bay, and would love to hear more about it.
Yeah, no, it's something obviously was many, many years in the planning process. And, I'd say Titletown generally, and, the different aspects of it we can talk about. But, we're a community-owned team, so, giving back to the community is a high priority. And, the investment that we've made in Titletown, we think will make Green Bay more attractive, more of not only a destination for people to come visit. So when they're in when they visit Green Bay, not only do they go on the tour one day, they spend some time at Titletown, but particularly for young professionals, I think we're creating an environment that maybe they're a little more likely to stay here or find a job here. And hopefully, like with our partnership with Microsoft and Titletown Tech, if that's as successful as we think it will be, you'll have some startup businesses here that will create some exciting jobs for not only to attract people in here, but to keep some of our college graduates. So, overall, the other thing, and this is, we look at it now, and financially we seem sound and secure, but looking in the long run, things can change, pretty quickly in the NFL. We want to make sure that the city of Green Bay and the region here can continue to support an NFL team, and I think having improving the economic base and in this region, I think is not only good for the region, it's good for the Packers long term. And one of our main goals as an organization is to make sure that the team stays in Green Bay.
It's interesting. I'm sure that as students prepare for their next step, whether it's college or a job, one of the listings they're probably not going to find is sports team execs. I'd be curious, your career arc as a former NFL player, and then how has your life as a player helped you as an exec, and kind of maybe just describe your career arc and how you've been successful.
Sure. I didn't go into college saying I'm going to be president of the Packers. I was fortunate enough, and I played 8 years in the NFL. And not just my experience playing in the NFL. I played obviously high school and college football. I learned an awful lot of life lessons. I played for some great coaches. One of the best coaches I played for was my college coach, Fred Dunlop. And I ironically ended up succeeding him as the athletic director at Colgate. So he's really been a mentor for me. Then I played for 2 Hall of Fame coaches in the NFL, George Allen and Joe Gibbs, and learned a lot about football, but also learned a lot about life lessons. So that's been invaluable for me. While I played, I was fortunate enough. We had a little more time in the off season then than they do now, so I was able to get my MBA at American University during the off seasons while I was playing, and then once my career ended. Got a full-time position with the NFLPA as an assistant executive director, and then went to law school in the evening. And so took a little bit longer going in the evening. After about 4 years, was able to get my law degree from Georgetown. And then, I started a career as I was a trial attorney for the Justice Department. Really was enjoying that, but I did miss my involvement in athletics. So when Fred Dunlop retired as the athletic director, was fortunate enough to be offered the position as athletic director. So that really kind of changed my career path, got me back into athletics. And I loved being an athletic director. I was at Colgate for almost 12 years and then 5 years at Northwestern. And was not looking to leave. Was really enjoying what I was doing, particularly at Northwestern, having been relatively new there. And but the opportunity as president for the position of president of the Packers opened up. I said, "Yeah, sure, I'll be interested." It was a man named Jed Hughes, who's interesting, was a coach in the NFL during the time that I played. So we had a lot of kind of connections, knew a lot of similar people and friends, and he was handling a search, working with the NCAA to try to. He and I had met during the search he was doing for the NFL or the NCAA, and then he ended up handling and running the search for the Packers president, and called me up and said, "Would you be interested in have this search?" And said, "Sure, I'd be interested." Not thinking I'd be a candidate at all, and. Make a long story short, throughout the process, was fortunate enough to be offered the position, and been here, going almost 12 years, which is hard to believe.
Oh, that's great. And you hear that's a really incredible story about a career arc, and you hear different things from different folks about the importance of passion for your work in order to be successful. Do you find that's been the case for you, and you made the transition back to?
Well, there's an old saying, Caleb. If you love your job, you never work a day in your life. So. No, I've been very fortunate. That's not to say, there aren't some days where it's like,
Right.
what's going on here? But no, yeah. And what I've tried to do as I've gone along in my career is to try to find positions where I can make a difference and where my background fits well with the position. And yeah, I feel very fortunate. And working with the Packers, such a unique organization that I think we all have the sense, all of us that work here have the sense that we're stewards, and that this is a very special, unique organization, and we all have an obligation to leave it better than we found it.
As a hometown Green Bay guy, I appreciate that sentiment. That's fantastic. I know the Packers are a really strong supporter of our internship draft day, and you guys partner with groups like the Northeast Wisconsin Resource Alliance and NEW Manufacturing. This program brings in like 60 Wisconsin companies with the goal of hiring college interns.
Yeah.
Just want to hear why the Packers are such big believers in this program.
Well, number one, it's a great program, and we know it helps, again, going back to keeping young professionals in the area. But we have multiple interns. We've got all different kind of internships just for training camp, just for the season, year long, in almost every area of our organization. And we found it. We're looking right here at Aaron Poppy. He started as an intern, so it's a great way to. For somebody to start in the business, and been a lot of success stories there where people come in as an intern, work hard, and end up getting a full-time position.
Well, that's great. That's kind of a common theme we hear throughout the state as we travel and talk to private business owners and other area folks looking to retain folks, and that's such an important piece is kind of making the introduction early and often, and so that's a big piece. And so the internship draft day.
I talk to a lot of college students, that are interested in, want a career in athletics, they want a career in sports. And the advice I give them is, number one, you're going to be patient because there's a high demand, a lot of people work in it. But you also may have to either be a volunteer or start out as an intern and just work your way up. One of my rookie year with the Washington Redskins, we had a volunteer assistant general manager, so a guy that he just wanted to break into the NFL. A few years older than me back then, but was Charlie Casserly. And he ended up becoming the Redskins general manager and then the Houston Texans general manager. Started as a volunteer and he worked and obviously he's had a great career.
That's wonderful. I recall Mike Holmgren was a high school football coach for a number of years. And
Sure.
Yeah, these interesting career arcs.
Well, that's the other thing we tell the interns. Don't be entitled, and no job is beneath you. And you can learn an awful lot in different ways from different people, and I really respect the interns and the students that come in and just they want to work and they want to learn and they want to and you can really tell which ones have the potential to really end up being great employees.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of draft days, we've looked ahead of the next couple of years, the next 5 to 8 years. There's a few open slots for different cities. Is Green Bay going to be making a play for any of those draft days?
Well, we've already made a play.
Oh,
We would love to host the draft. I think it'd be great for obviously for the community, but I think it'd also be good for the league. And we've kind of tied it in to a couple things: the new Expo Hall that's going in, replacing the Brown County Arena, and then also Titletown. So I think we've applied to host in 2022 and then 2024 and beyond. And our thought is by that time, Titletown will be further developed. We'll have our residential as well as our office. The Expo Hall will be up and running. The league is moving it around. Obviously, it was in New York for many years, and then I think 2 years in Chicago. But now it's on, moving it around, kind of like the way they do the Super Bowl. But I think what the league is doing is they're focusing on communities that will never host a Super Bowl. And we will never, despite all of our fans that would love to have a Super Bowl here, that's not going to happen. But I do think there's a chance that we can host a draft, and hopefully in the not too distant future.
That's great. One last note on drafts, as far as you guys evaluating personnel needs, you find yourself looking for a 6 foot, 270-pound guy that runs a 6 flat 40. Think J.J. Watt, but shorter and slower. I did long snap in high school, so if you guys are looking for
Well, you know, we always look for long snappers. That's how our game has become so specialized.
Yeah,
That,
well,
you know,
Rob Davis was here forever, and I remember really, watching him. Long snap in high school was one thing, but watching Rob Davis for 12 or 15 years, whatever it was pretty special. So, well, very cool.
well, we'll look at it. I don't think I can make any guarantees.
And I think the big impediment is likely that I want to wear number 66. That's been retired, so I get it if it doesn't work out. That's quite all right.
You
but,
do look a little bit like Ray Nitschke. I don't know.
well, the hairline's similar, and I think he's probably a little more handsome than I am. Has a better acting career, but just really appreciate you taking the time with us today as we kind of make our way around the state to talk workforce issues with folks. And I think the Packers are a pretty special team and a special company, so we really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, no problem. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, Mark, I can't due to FCC rules and wanting to keep my job, I can't do a full Charlie Barron sign off. But go Packers, and nothing but the best or the worst of luck to the other NFC North teams. And appreciate you having us today.
Oh, all right. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Well, most of you know I could talk about the Packers all day long, all week long, all month long, and talk to Mark Murphy all day because he's a really smart, interesting guy. I am really pleased to now be joined by DWD's very own chief Wisconomist, Dennis Winters. Dennis, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
You bet. Hope you don't mind me saying Wisconomist. It's just so darn catchy we can't not say it.
All right.
Oh, good. Well, a couple questions for you here. We see different measurements and different numbers representing the health of the economy. A lot of times measured by unemployment rate, labor force participation, and perhaps the addition or subtraction of private sector jobs. But is there data out there that shows, how big of a problem chronic underemployment is in Wisconsin?
Well, yeah, I mean, we as you know, we've got all kinds of numbers that we look at day in and day out, and we actually have 6 unemployment rates.
Wow.
The one we usually see is the youth, what we call the U3. And that's 2.8%. That's the lowest it's been in history for us. And there's a couple others. The ones that another that get paid attention to a lot is the U6 rate, and that brings in other people, and it looks at people that are having trouble finding jobs, or those are essentially discouraged out of the market. And that rate's running about 6.1%. So it's fairly high, but it's at a record low too. I mean, during recessions and such, it gets very high in the double digits by far.
Yeah, just so folks listening know, when referring to underemployment, it's kind of those folks that are maybe already working and maybe looking to seek full-time work, but maybe aren't fully employed to their full capabilities. So appreciate the insight there. And then curious if we have any insight or metrics into how many people are working multiple jobs to make ends meet here in Wisconsin.
Right. There's a number of folks that are work. We've got estimates that about roughly 10% of the workforce is working 2 jobs. So that puts it at about 130,000 people that are working more than one job.
Okay, that's a big number.
Yeah, and some of them want to. They like the versatility and things like that. Others they have to, to make ends meet. So.
I know historically Wisconsin's had a very high labor force participation rate. When we see surveys, right, employers often think of Wisconsin as having a strong work ethic. Is that kind of borne out in these numbers as well?
It is. Our labor force participation rate is among the highest in the country, and it's 67.3% now, and it's full 5 percentage points above the national average. So
something to be proud of. That's great.
Yeah, it's mostly due to our women.
Yeah.
We got
Okay.
working women in the state. Yep.
I think you said that before. Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the metrics, some of the places Wisconsin leads. That is one of them, huh?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's
yeah.
great. And so we do sit at that historic low of 2.8%, and we're near a record low for a number of folks unemployed. With a tight labor market like this, a lot of folks would assume the competition would force wages to move higher as folks compete for those remaining employees in the market. Does data show that we're seeing commensurate wage growth in Wisconsin with what we'd expect to see?
Well, we'd like to see some more. Obviously, everybody's always looking for higher wages and such. But over the last year, we've seen almost a 4% increase in wages. It's not all going to all segments equally. I mean, those with the highest talent and highest skills are getting bigger increases because that's where the shortages are yet.
Okay.
But on the whole, yeah, we're certainly above inflation rates.
Oh, good. That's excellent. As you look at kind of driving quality of life gains for folks, that's a metric that I know this administration wants to pay close attention to, is that folks are, participating in those productivity gains and seeing some quality of life gains above inflation. So that's great to hear.
Right.
Yeah, we've been traveling the state kind of since day one, but I've been hearing from employers across Wisconsin that they need more operation or more workers to fill their operations. To just maintain what they've got going on. In many cases, they'd like to expand. And so with that in mind, we've been focusing on, helping individuals overcome barriers, get them into the full-time work that provides a living wage. In your work as an economist, what are some of the biggest barriers that you've seen for folks that want to enter the workforce but haven't been able to break through?
Well, there's a myriad of barriers there. Some of it is skill sets, right? They just don't have enough skills to get in, and we've got, departments obviously got programs to upskill people. But there's a lot of things: transportation, healthcare, dependent care, either for working for their parents, right, working people, or their children. They don't have enough daycare provision, for example, to get to work, regularly and things like that, which can be a problem. And if you've got more than two of those barriers, then it's kind of a tough road to hoe, right? Mm-hmm. So if if your car breaks down for some reason and you can't get your child to daycare, there's a pretty good chance you're probably not going to be able to make the job that day either.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. Spending time both in Madison, Milwaukee, and kind of outstate Wisconsin, it's amazing to me how many of the barriers are similar and some are so different in terms of, if you're in the northern part of the state, your job opportunities are sometimes 40, 50 miles away, mm-hmm. So transportation becomes a bigger issue, but it's still an issue in Madison and Milwaukee if your car breaks down and you don't have the means to fix it, or if your transportation ends at the county line, public transportation, and you're kind of in trouble. So it's interesting. We've heard some similar and different barriers across the state. And something else we hear a lot about is, making sure we can have an attractive state to attract new people here. We've different groups, whether it's millennials or veterans or alumni. So we've talked a lot about trying to attract younger workers to Wisconsin. From what you've seen in your work, what does the next generation of workers consider when they're determining where to start their career? Have you guys seen any particular metrics or any feedback as to what they really look at when it comes to picking a place to be? And are there areas of the country that are attracting that talent, and what are some of the reasons for that?
Well, the interesting thing we see is that, why wages matter, it's not the top issue, it seems to be anymore. Most importantly, it seems to be, for at least the young crowd, is what is there to do off the job in the communities they're at, right? So I can work, I've got the talent, I can go here, but if I'm a rock climber, are you going to hang around central Illinois? No, you're probably going to go to the Rockies or something like that, right? So it's what appeals to the person off the job and what they can bring to the table along with that.
Yeah, I think we've seen some of that bear out in the numbers between the moves to an Austin or to, Denver's just been this hot place for folks to move for the last decade or so, and it seems to be some of those recreational opportunities along with, job opportunities. And to be curious, from your perspective, what can we do? There's not a stable of unemployed folks just waiting to make a move, but to the extent we can be really competitive and hopefully win this battle for talent, what do you think Wisconsin can do to make ourselves more competitive, more attractive in that battle for younger employees? I'm sorry.
Right. Well, it's quality of life. We have that pretty well. Some would say in spades. But a lot of other places do too. So it's a combination of what are the incentives you can bring here, good schools, things like that. What can you do off the job? Salary is certainly an important part on the margin and things like that. So it's what attracts people to Wisconsin. We got a lot they like outdoor things, right? It's a place to come if you want to hunt and fish, and we've got arts and entertainment in the cities, and we're pretty close to a lot of things. So I would look at it more as how long it takes to get to something, not how many miles.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that's something we've focused on a lot in this administration, is trying to look at the economic infrastructure and how can we make our communities more attractive. And I think you're right. We do have a lot of attractive qualities here in Wisconsin, but investing in things like our schools, like our roads, like in broadband connectivity throughout the state, we want to make Wisconsin the most attractive place for people to be. And that's you've seen that in some of our policy proposals and where we've been in terms of our attention and priorities. So we're excited about that. Would love to see more folks move to Wisconsin for those attractive communities.
Right, so. Right. Well, as you know, broadband is everywhere. It's for education, it's for entertainment, it's for business. It's it runs the gamut of services and goods that have to be delivered through it.
Yeah, we've seen that. I think some of the things that make rural Wisconsin so attractive, the quality of life, the topography, the trees, the water, are some of the things that make broadband so difficult. And if we want to have telecommuters come here, or new entrepreneurs, or new business owners, or have small businesses be successful marketing themselves and their products in a global marketplace, that broadband connectivity is such an important integral part of making sure Wisconsin's competitive. So we'd love to see additional investment made in broadband for sure.
Great.
Awesome. Anything else, Dennis, for the good of the group?
Well, it's a talent competitive environment right now. That worm has kind of turned, and other states aren't just going to let us attract all their talent either. They're going to be taking countermeasures to do it all, and there's certainly the upper Midwest and most of the U.S. is in the same sort of situation. So
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, the nationwide unemployment rate is sub 4%, so there's not a stable of folks just hanging out somewhere looking for a place to go, but we'd love to be competitive. Our sports teams are doing their part. The Packers, Badgers, Brewers, and Bucks are certainly holding up their end of the bargain, so hopefully our business and state priorities can contribute as well. That'd be great.
great.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having us, or thanks for being here, Dennis. We appreciate it, and we'll see you here next month.
My pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. Next, I will be talking to 7-year-old Kennedy, and Kennedy will tell us what she wants to be when she grows up. All right. What is your name?
Kennedy,
And Kennedy, how old are you?
7.
Okay. And what do you like to do for fun?
Play with my cats on the farm.
That's cool. How many cats do you have?
More than 12 or
Oh my goodness, there must be kittens in there. There are a lot of kittens. Very cool. And what do you think you want to be when you grow up?
a farmer.
That's pretty cool. What kind of farmer do you think you'd be doing? Animals or crops or a combination of the two? What are you thinking?
Combination of the two.
Okay, that's good. You can grow some crops to feed the animals, and then that's a good idea. I like that. So, what do you think being a farmer entails as far as daily chores and daily tasks and that
I
kind of
like
thing?
it.
You like it? What do you think they do? Like, what are some of the tasks you have to do every day?
You have to wake up every morning, go out, feed the cows on the tractors, and then you feed the cats, and then you put more food in the combiner for the cows the
Okay.
next morning.
Well, there you go. And do you think if you wanted to be a farmer, you'd have to get some kind of training? Would you have to do some kind of training to become a successful farmer? Do you think that would be in school, or would it be on the job, or a little bit of both? What do you think would be the most effective way to train to be a farmer?
School.
Yeah, I think a lot of folks do end up going to school. A lot of friends that went to school for dairy science or animal science, agronomy, and so you can learn a lot. And then also, it sounds like you guys are moving to a farm this summer. Is that right? That's pretty exciting. You can learn a lot when you're there too.
And actually, this weekend we are going there for an Easter egg hunt.
Oh, cool.
It's going to be very hard since we're doing it outside.
That
And
might
it's
be-
a very big farm.
That might be tough, but it'll be kind of fun. You get a lot of steps in. That'll be good. Do you think there's any special skills you need to be a successful farmer, or anything you need to be really good at?
Waking up early enough to feed the cows.
I do think there's something to be said about being an
Because
early
one
bird.
morning I forgot to wake up early, and then Jeff was already all dressed. And I'm like, darn, I'll be out in a minute.
Uh-oh. Well, did you get the cows fed? Yeah, I think getting up early, working hard. Science is pretty important. Probably understanding weather, too, to make sure you're not stuck out in the field when it's raining and that kind of thing. So, sounds like you got a good head start. You're all set. You excited about that potential to be a farmer? Good. Well, very cool. Well, Kennedy, really excited you came by today, and thanks for being part of this day with us. Awesome. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the first episode of On Wisconsin Workforce. If you want to learn more about the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development, check out our website at www.dwd.wisconsin.gov. You can also follow us on Facebook or LinkedIn by searching for the Wisconsin Department of Workforce Development, and you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at WI Workforce. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'm Secretary of Department of Workforce Development Caleb Frostman, and this is On Wisconsin Workforce.